Hey everyone, this is Jason Clemmons. Welcome. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, right here on Wednesday, May the 1st. Man, we've started our 9th month doing the show right now. I think that's right. September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. Starting our 9th month. Finished 8 months of doing this. We could almost have grown a baby by now doing this show. So that's kind of what we're doing. Welcome. This is Jason Clemmons of Dr. Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We're live right here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios. We're live on Facebook at the Rock Health and Wellness Centers. We're live on YouTube at Health from the Rock, and we're live on Twitter or X at Dr. Jason Clemmons. We're also right here on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation and 987radio.com and the Live 365 app. So we're live. We're live all over the planet right now, as far as I know. And I hope you guys have had a great day. It's been busy at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We've been working on folks all day long. And I'm excited about this show tonight. You know, we've done Wednesday nights, usually our book review night. And it's been a while since we've kind of really dove into a book, to break down a book. And I really thought we would try it again tonight. I got a couple of books by the same author, Grain Brain and Brain Maker. Those are two books by Dr. David Perlmutter. And so if you guys want to stick around with us tonight, that's what we're going to talk about. Dr. David Perlmutter is a board-certified neurologist and a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. He is the recipient of the Linus Pauling Award and the author of the #1 New York Times best-selling Grain Brain, as well as the Grain Brain Cookbook, Better Brain Book, Raise a Smarter Child by Kindergarten. He lives and practices in Naples, Florida. And so really sharp guy, like his stuff, taught me a lot of stuff. And then just on the back, and some of the people that talked about it, said something good about his book. Dr. Mark Hyman, which I talk about a lot. You guys know that. A game changer. The brilliant Dr. Perlmutter teaches us why we need to tend to our inner garden and provides a radical but simple plan to reset, reboot, and renew your microbiome. This shouldn't be called Brain Maker. It should be called Health Maker. That was from Dr. Mark Hyman. And then Dr. Oz says, humans outsource digestion to their gut bacteria. Dr. Perlmutter takes us on a journey to understand how these foreigners profoundly influence our brains for good and bad. And then Dr. Dale Bredesen, Dr. Perlmutter is a leader in the burgeoning field, and his new book is a landmark contribution. And John Ratty, the guy that wrote Spark that we always talk about, professor of psychiatry, Harvard Medical School, and co-author of Spark and Go Wild, Paradigm Shifting. By connecting the dots from our gut to our brain, Dr. Perlmutter gives us a fighting chance against brain decline. I love this book. So Daniel Amen is on here. Martha Herbert's on here. William Davis, that wrote Wheat Belly, is on here. So I have almost all those books. And we ought to get back to doing the book review. I think that's kind of cool. But we're going to try to combine just some chapters in both of these books today, and see if you guys can learn something, and see if I can learn something. It's going to be fun. It'll be fun to refresh some of the things. So cholesterol is one of them. That's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about, cholesterol and statins, and because it gives me an opportunity to talk about these things and just read what a medical doctor says, and that way it keeps me from getting in trouble for talking outside my scope of practice. But the older I get, the less I give a rip about some things, and I've never really been that way in my whole life. And I understand that there's consequences to some of that. I understand that there's some people that are not going to like me, but this whole pharmaceutical industry and this whole thing that with all the crap that gets given to the people, I just kind of got to the point where I'm just not interested in it anymore. I'm not interested in acting like I'm going to be politically correct. I'm not interested in acting like I'm going to just talk about, not talk about those things. So I'm going to do them classy as I can and peaceful as I can, but some of it's not peaceful. Some of it's garbage, and it's time that we made the change. And you guys that are trying to be healthier, that's who I think I'm talking to. You guys that watch my show or listen to my show, I think I'm talking to that group of people that are trying to be healthier, because it takes a commitment to watch this show. We're on every night, and it's 6 to 7. And I know you guys are busy out there. You got lots of things to do, or catch it. You catch it later on social media, but I really think that the group of people that are watching it are people who are trying to get healthier, and I'm seeing the results of that, because I'm seeing some of the people that are coming into my office that talk to me about listening to the show. And it's Dr. DeMartini says if you stick your hand in a pot of glue, you get it on you, right? You can't help but get the glue on you. And when you put yourself in an environment of healthy people, it just starts rubbing off on you. When you just start when you start surrounding yourself with healthy people. And it was my parents, when you're growing up and going through high school and stuff, it's kind of like, you better watch out who you hang out with, because they're going to have an influence on you one way or the other. And the way we travel through life, we at different times in life, we hang out with different people. We hang out with at different times. There's different seasons, and I have seen in my 53 years of life that where I put my mind, the things that I put my attention to, are the things that I end up with. And so, thank you, JT. Got an amen on that one. But you start hanging around people that don't care about anything about health, and you'll start getting sicker. And and the opposite applies too. If you start hanging around people that do care about health, almost by default, you'll start making healthier choices. And so I think we just ought to just draw a line in the sand, and we just ought to say, look, metformin destroys mitochondria in the liver. That's just straight up the way it works. Well, guess what we're going to talk about tonight in Dr. Perlmutter's book? We're going to talk about cholesterol and dealing with statins and all that sort of thing, and what statins do. And one of the sentences that I found in here was right off the bat, was how cholesterol jacks up your ability to make how statin drugs jack up your ability to make cholesterol. And I'll get to it in a minute when we break down the book. I don't remember exactly what page it was on right there, but I was just kind of I was reading through some of that, and so it was. I don't think we're getting told those things properly. I think that we're just going to the doctor. The doctor's giving us a diagnosis, and the doctor's giving us a medicine, some sort of drug that's based on that diagnosis. And I think that you guys, not the whole population, because I know the whole population doesn't care. You know how we're just about to get through with this little Ozempic thing, right? All that Ozempic craze and all that, that Mongiorno or whatever it's called, that is just about to get all those people that thought that was an end all be all to everything are now starting to figure out, nope, that wasn't all that cracked up, wasn't all it's cracked up to be. And those people that sell that stuff like it's the answers to things are not doing you a favor, and they're not helping your life, and they're not making your life better. So we're going to talk about it. I don't want to get on a soapbox tonight, but it's kind of freeing, really. It's just kind of freeing to be able to speak your mind and say what you think, and just say, look here, that stuff, somebody needs to stand up and say it. And I think there's a lot of people that are saying it. There's some of them that are in the middle. I see some of these guys that talk to you about health. They're kind of in the middle. I mean, like what Dr. Hyman says about this book right here. He says they shouldn't be called the brain maker. It should be called the health maker. Yeah, well, Dr. Hyman is one of those guys that's kind of all in this health thing. I mean, he's pretty dang invested into the whole health thing. If you guys don't know him, Dr. Mark Hyman, he's great. I never met him, but I just followed him with all this stuff. He's great. But there's some of those guys that I listen to that talk about healthy things at times, but they're not in the health field. They're still, they don't even, it's not really their fault as much as they don't know what they're talking about. And so I think it's great that we have some of that. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. But before we start that, we got the neurofeedback stuff working. We got brain mapping going on at the office. If you're interested in brain mapping, give us a call. If you don't know what that is, you could go to Brain Master on YouTube and you could look at some of that stuff. I'll start to have some more information on our stuff that you can read about. But that is one of the things that we're doing now, and we're getting some pretty interesting findings that's going on, and now we're able to address some things at another level. So that's what we're doing with the neurofeedback. That's one of the things that's happening. If you're interested in that, then we are. Yeah, got a feedback. So we're doing that. So let's get into the book, and I just want to pick out a chapter. Dr. Perlmutter is great, and what he's basically doing, the grain brain, is he's trying to explain to us how what's going on in, like, as far as your gut microbiome is happening. And I'll read just a little bit of this introduction, so you kind of get an idea of where he's coming from. It says, if you could ask your grandparents or great grandparents what people died from when they were growing up, you'd likely hear the words old age. Or you might learn the story of someone who got a nasty germ and passed away prematurely from tuberculosis, cholera, or dysentery. What you won't hear are things like diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and dementia. Since the mid-20th century, we have attributed to someone's immediate cause of death to a single disease rather than use the term old age on a death certificate. And that just an aside right there, that brings me to an interesting point. It really is an interesting point. We got the death certificate back. You guys know that my dad passed away. And we got the death certificate back, and the cause of death for my dad was termed interstitial lung disease. That was what was considered to be the cause of death. Now, that's the first time I've ever heard that. Didn't hear anything about that before. Don't know where that came from. I think that was just made up. I think his medical doctor had to put something on his death certificate, and he just picked some random thing that he was dealing with, and that's what he said he died of. So I know firsthand that his interstitial lung disease was not the cause of his death. It was a contributing factor to his ill health, but his lung disease didn't change. He didn't even have lung disease. It didn't change any between in the last year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Dad couldn't get out of bed because his feet were hurting so bad that his neuropathy in his feet was so bad that he couldn't get out of bed, which caused his brain to quit working properly, which caused his body to break down, and then he quit eating and he starved himself to death in the last 10 days of his life. That's what he died from. Now, does the medical doctor know that? No, he doesn't know that, because he wasn't there with him any of those last days of his life. He stopped by the hospital. Dad was in the hospital about 2 or 3 weeks before he died, and he stopped by the hospital and saw him for a minute, and then they sent him home. And so I'm not bitter about that. I don't care about that situation. I don't care about the relationship he had with his medical doctor, whatever. I'm not being critical of his medical doctor. I'm just simply saying that right here, when you ask someone what they died of and what's on the death certificate, that may not have anything to do with what they died of. My dad was old and worn out. He was 80 years old, and he was way older than 80. And his body was worn out and tired, and his brain was worn out and tired, and that's why he died. So whatever is on that death certificate doesn't have anything to do with anything. But today, those single diseases tend to be the kind that go on in chronic degenerating state and involve multiple complications and symptoms that accumulate over time, which is why 80 to 90-year-olds don't usually die from a specific ailment, like an old house, an ongoing disrepair, the materials weather and rust, the plumbing, the electricals falter, and the walls begin to crack from tiny fissures you cannot see. Throughout the home's natural decline, you do the needed maintenance whenever necessary, but it will never be like new unless you tear the structure down and start over. Each attempt at patching and fixing buys you more time, but eventually the areas in desperate need of total remodel or complete replacement are everywhere. And within all things in life, the human body simply wears out. And that's what I'm saying. That's what happened to Dad. An unfeebling illness sets in and slowly progresses in an excruciating pace until the body finally goes kaput. This is especially true when it comes to brain disorders, including the most dreaded of them all, Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Perlmutter is a neurologist, right? So he's a board certified neurologist. It's a modern medical boogeyman that's never far from the headlines. If there is one health worry that seems to eclipse all others as people get older, it's falling prey to Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia that leaves you unable to think, reason, and remember. Research shows how deep the angst runs. In 2011, a study conducted by Harris Interactive for the MetLife Foundation showed that 31% of people fear dementia more than death and cancer. And this fear does not just affect older people. And so he comes down to say, I'm here to tell you that the fate of your brain is not in your genes. And that's something that when you study health, if you really get into health, you'll get away from that whole gene theory thing. None of the people that I listen to, none of these guys buy the theory of that your genes are your problem. And he's saying, I'm here to tell you that the fate of your brain is not in your genes. Because my granddaddy had Alzheimer's disease does not mean I'm going to have Alzheimer's disease. That's not the way it works. And Dr. Perlmutter is saying the same thing. It's not inevitable. And if you're someone who suffers from another type of brain disorder, such as chronic headaches, depression, epilepsy, or extreme moodiness, the culprit may not be encoded in your DNA. It's in the food you eat. There's so many things. Last night, we talked about diabetes, and we talked about one of our dear friends that has diabetes, and it's in the food we eat. That's the thing. It's in the food we eat. And it's in the movement we get. And it's in the way that our brain is firing. Now, I don't have the answer to all of the Alzheimer's problems, I don't think. I don't treat those things. These guys treat diseases. I don't treat diseases. What I try to do is understand that, hey, look, we got to get better at our food. And if you want to go back and watch the second half of last night's show, we did talk about diabetes. And we did talk about there is no reason to be dying from diabetes, type 2 diabetes, not type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes in 2024. It's ridiculous. And we got to get the help that we need. So, yes, you read that right. Brain dysfunction starts in your daily bread. And I'm going to prove it. I'll state it again because I realize it sounds absurd. Modern grains are silently destroying your brain. By modern, I'm not just referring to the refined white flours, pastas, and rice that have already been demonized by the anti-obesity folks. I'm referring to all the grains that so many of us have embraced and being healthful: whole wheat, whole grains, multigrains, 7 grains, live grains, stone ground, and so on. Basically, I'm calling what is arguably our most beloved dietary staple a terrorist group that bullies our most precious organ, the brain. I will demonstrate how fruit and other carbohydrates could be healthy hazards with far-reaching consequences that not only will wreak physical havoc on your brain, but it also will accelerate your brain's aging process from the inside out. This isn't science fiction. It's now documented fact. It is my objective in writing Grain Brain to provide information that is sound and based in evolutionary, modern scientific, and physiological perspectives. This book goes outside the box of the layman's accepted dogma and away from vested corporate interest. It proposes a new way of understanding the root cause of brain disease and offers a promising message of hope. Brain disease can be largely prevented through the choices you make in life. So can diabetes, and so can cancer, and it's all those things that we do on a daily basis. It's like we can make better choices. If we were informed to make better choices, we could make better choices, but we don't. And so maybe we can. Maybe if we hang around with each other, maybe if we hang around with each other, and I'll tell you what, I try to bring you everything I know, and you guys can tell that. I'm as transparent as I could possibly be on this show. I try to bring you everything I know about health. I try to share with you everything I know. But every day I get things back from you guys that's sharing with me about health. And I learned. I had a text last night at 9 o'clock. Hey, have you seen this book about the brain in the Bible? And I was like, no, I haven't seen that book. That's pretty cool. I need to check that out. And that's good news for me. Like there's no way that I could. I was thinking about it today. I was thinking about I'd really like to do a show on gardening, and I don't know anything about gardening. I don't. I go to the grocery store and get my fruits and vegetables. Um, so I don't know anything about gardening. I probably ought to get somebody. One of you guys ought to come on the show and we can talk about gardening. You guys that know something about gardening, you guys could do that. But um, if we share this information with each other, and we stay involved in the process, and we keep learning from people like Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Hyman, Dr. Bredesen, and all those guys, like we can make our lives better. I think it's true, right? So if you haven't figured out by now, I'll be crystal clear. This is from the book. This is not just another diet book or generic how-to guide of all things to prevent health. This is a game changer. So eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, sweat once in a while, get plenty of rest, don't smoke, laugh more. There are certain tenets to health that are pretty commonsensical and that we all know we should practice routinely. But somehow, when it comes to preserving our brain's health and mental faculties, we tend to think it's not really up to us. But somehow it's our destiny to develop brain disorders during our prime and grow senile in our older years, or that we will escape such fate through the luck of good genes or medical breakthroughs. Certainly, we would probably do well to stay mentally engaged after retirement, complete crossword puzzles, keep reading, and go to museums. My 97-year-old grandmother-in-law, Leslie's grandmother, was 97 years old. That lady did crossword puzzles every day nearly. Crossword puzzles and bingo. She used to go to bingo and then crossword puzzle. Good stuff. She was a smart lady. And it's not like there's a blatantly obvious direct correlation between the brain dysfunction and specific lifestyle choices as there is between, say, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day and getting lung cancer, or gorging on French fries and becoming obese. Like I said, we have a habit of categorizing brain ailments separately from other afflictions we attribute to bad habits. I'm going to change this perspective by showing you the relationship between how you can live and your risk of developing an array of brain-related problems, some that can strike you when you're a toddler and others that get diagnosed at the other end of your lifespan. I believe that the shift in our diet has occurred over the past century from high-fat, low-carb to today's low-fat, high-carb diet, fundamentally consisting of grains and other damaging carbohydrates. He believes that is the origin of many modern scourges linked to the brain, including chronic headaches, insomnia, anxiety, depression, epilepsy, movement disorders, schizophrenia, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and those senior moments that are quite likely heralded senior cognitive decline and full-blown, irreversible, untreatable, and uncurable brain disease. I'll reveal to you the profound effects that grains could be having on your brain right now without you even sensing it. So this is pretty good stuff. This book that he gets into it. He'll talk about the brain, drawing on a decade of clinical and laboratory studies, including my own, as well as extraordinary results I have seen over the past 30 odd years in my practice. I tell you what we know and how we can take advantage of this knowledge. I'll also offer comprehensive action plans to transform your cognitive health and add vibrant years to your life. And the benefits don't stop at brain health. I can promise that this program can help any of the following. And this is Dr. Perlmutter: ADD, anxiety and chronic stress, chronic headaches and migraines, depression, diabetes, epilepsy, focus and concentration problems, inflammatory conditions and diseases, including arthritis, insomnia, intestinal problems, including celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, and irritable bowel, memory problems and mild cognitive impairment, mood disorders, overweight and obesity, Tourette syndrome, and much more. So inside the book, he's going to give us a plan about all this stuff, and we're going to touch on a little bit of it here on the second half of the show. So let's take a break. We'll be right back with Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, right after these messages. All right, give me 1 second, you guys. I'm supposed to have a tornado watch. I don't know what's going on out there, but it looks really dark out there. Not that I'm, good Lord knows what I'm doing. Yeah, we got a little bit of that coming on. But these two books, Grain Brain and Brain Maker, those are the two books that the front part of the book describes things. The back part of the book talks about like here's menus and stuff. Here's a 7-day meal plan. On breakfast, 2 scrambled eggs with stir-fried onions, mushrooms, and spinach, and 1 cup of milk-based kefir, optional coffee or black tea. Lunch, stir-fried vegetables with corn spice pork loin, optional. Filtered water with 1 teaspoon of acacia powder or kombucha. Yeah. 3 ounces of raw fish. So it's the stuff that you would figure, but the front of the book has a bunch of information. Here's one on artificial sweeteners, sugar sweetened beverages, beverage consumption, and research is now underway on humans. And so far, preliminary results indeed show that artificial sugar isn't what it's long cracked up to be: a safe and healthier alternative to real sugar. Studies are emerging that show that gut bacteria of people who regularly consume artificial sweeteners look different from gut bacteria of people who do not. Correlations have also been found between those who use artificial sweeteners and those who weigh more and have higher fasting blood sugar, a condition we know leads to many negative health effects. So it's just one thing right there. So, hey everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Wednesday, May the 1st, and we are breaking down 2 books. We are breaking down Grain Brain and Brain Maker by Dr. David Perlmutter. Dr. David Perlmutter is a board-certified neurologist and a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. He is the recipient of the Linus Pauling Award and the author of several #1 best-selling books. He lives and practices in Naples, Florida. And copyright on these books, let me see what this says right here, because just so you know when this was, 2015 was on the Brain Maker and the Grain Brain. This book was over at my mom and dad's house, and I was over there the other day, and Mom said, "You want some of these books?" And I was like, "Man, yes, I do want that book. 2013 was the Grain Brain. So I just want to let's get into some of the things that we talk about. We're going to skip to chapter 3, and there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. But the chapter 2 is basically about inflammation, the cornerstone of brain disease. What you don't know about inflammation. The chief function of the body is to carry the brain around. Thomas Edison. So it talks a lot about inflammation, and I might come back to this inflammation chapter here in a bit. But I wanted to get on to like the attention, carboholics and fat phobics. Surprising truths about your brain's real enemies and lovers. Some of my most remarkable case studies involve people transforming their lives and health through the total elimination of gluten from their diets and a new appreciation for fats instead of carbs. I've watched this single dietary shift lift depression, relieve chronic fatigue, and reverse type 2 diabetes, extinguish obsessive compulsive behavior, and cure many neurological challenges from brain fog to bipolar disorder. So he's right up our alley when he's talking about nutrition and how nutrition affects the brain. And we know that, right? We know that for you guys that are listening, that listeners to the show, we've talked about that lots and lots of time. Nutrition affects the brain. But apart from gluten, there's much more to the story of carbohydrates in general and their impact on brain health. Gluten isn't the only villain. To shift your body's biochemistry to one that burns fat, including the kind that never goes away, tames inflammation, and prevents illness and mental dysfunction, you need to factor in another big piece of the equation: carbs versus fats. In this chapter, I'll take you on a tour of why an extremely low carb and high fat diet is what your body fundamentally craves and needs. I'll also explain that why consuming excess carbohydrates, even those that don't contain gluten, can be as harmful as eating gluten-laden diet. Ironically, ever since we scientized nutrition, the state of our health has declined. So consider, well, I'll just read this little aside right here. One of the most profitable businesses for food manufacturers is cereal. It is one of the only industries that can turn an inexpensive ingredient, processed grains, into a pricey commodity. The Research and Development Department for General Mills, called the Institute for Cereal Technology and located in Minneapolis, is home to hundreds of scientists whose sole purpose is to design new and tasty cereals that can command a high price and last for a long time on the shelves. And I know this firsthand. When I was in chiropractic school, I mentioned this to you early on. When I was in chiropractic school, we were in Sunday school class with a guy, and he's a super cool dude. He is a super successful human being. He is very smart. They are great people. He led our Sunday school class. His wife is just the sweetest lady in the world. Has two great kids. I think the world of him. He's just a good dude. He's a Wharton College of Business graduate. Like he's smart as heck. He was high up in Walmart for a long time. Really, really smart guy. But one day our kids played on softball or t-ball team together, and one day he was late getting to the game, and I said, "Hey, what have you been doing?" And he was like, "Oh, he was the brand manager for Rolled Gold Pretzels at the time, and he said we've been doing some research and development into what shapes and colors kids like best in their chips. We take a bunch of kids and we put them in the room, and then we give them some chips, and some of them are cones and some of them are flat, and so they're different shapes and stuff, and then we color them differently to see which ones the kids are going to like the best, to see which ones they're going to consume, to see which ones we're going to market to the kids." And I just remember thinking about that when he was telling me, and I was like, that's pretty jacked up. That's what you do to the kids. Like it's kind of weird that grown people would manipulate children like that. And that's the same thing. Is home to hundreds of scientists whose sole purpose is design and new and tasty cereals that command a high price. Man, you know how many bowls of Lucky Charms I've had in my lifetime? Lucky Charms and Cheerios and Frosted Flakes and Cookie Crisp And all of that garbage cereal stuff that I used to eat when I was growing up and when I was an adult, before I stopped all that stuff, yeah. Uh, Consider what you've experienced in just the past few decades. You've witnessed an untold number of ideas on what you should consume and your fuel and metabolism, only to learn the opposite could be true. Take eggs, for instance. Eggs were thought to be good for you, then they were deemed to be bad for you because of their saturated fat content, and then you were exceedingly confused by messages implying that more evidence is needed to determine the healthy effects of eggs. It's unfair, I know. With all this white noise, it's no wonder that people feel endlessly frustrated. This chapter should make you rejoice. I'm going to rescue you from this lifetime of trying to avoid eating fat and cholesterol and prove how these delicious ingredients preserve the highest function of your brain. We've developed a taste for fat for good reason. It's our brain's secret love. In the last several decades, it's been demonized an unhealthy nutritional source. We've regrettably become a fat-phobic, carb-addicted society. Even to this day, we still think, "Oh man, I got to get the low fat. I got to get the low fat milk. I got to get the low fat stuff." Right? Yeah, it's not true. There are compelling scientific supports. There is compelling scientific support that trans fats are toxic and are clearly linked to any number of chronic diseases. But the missing message is simple. Our bodies thrive when good fats, and cholesterol is one of them. And we don't do so well with copious amounts of carbohydrates, even if those carbs are gluten-free, whole grain, and high in fiber. Interestingly, the human dietary requirement for carbohydrates is virtually zero. We can survive on a minimal amount of carbohydrate, which can be furnished by the liver as needed, but we can't go long without fat. Unfortunately, most of us equate the idea of eating fat to being fat, when in reality, obesity and its metabolic consequences has almost nothing to do with dietary fat consumption and everything to do with our addiction to carbs.